7 o'clock on the 11th of February, and this is the executive meeting here at East Herts. Welcome everyone. Nice to see everyone here tonight. It's probably going to be quite a long meeting, so hopefully we can crack along. First, item 1: apologies for absence. No apologies. Thank you. Just to remind everyone, as usual. Obviously, the meeting's webcast, so please do speak into our microphones so that everyone can hear us. Item 3 is the minutes of the 7th of January 2025, and that's on page 6 to 12 of the agenda pack. So are there any comments or corrections or questions about that? No? Okay. So could I have a proposer for those minutes, please? Thank you. Thanks, Marnie. And a seconder. Thanks, Chris. So we have the minutes proposed and seconded. Can we have a vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Lovely. Thank you very much. Right. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Good. Nothing. Lovely. Okay. So at this point, we would normally go to item 5, but I propose going to item 9, which is the call for sites paper. So if that's okay with everyone, yeah, we'll move on to that. So this is the call for sites, item 9, which is on pages 242 to 643 of the agenda, and there's a supplementary agenda as well. And I'm going to hand over to Councillor Vicky Glover-Ward, the Exec Member for Planning and Growth.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening. This Council agreed in late 2023 that there should be a review of the adopted district plan. Last October, this Council agreed that the Local Development Scheme, which revised the timetable for the production of an updated district plan to commencing this autumn. When updating the district plan, the planning team need to assemble a huge amount of evidence to support any strategy or policy in the plan that the Council wants to include. The Government requires that up-to-date plans should provide a framework for addressing housing needs, along with other economic, social and environmental priorities. As the local planning authority, it is the responsibility of the Council to ensure that sufficient homes are built every year to meet our housing requirements, and these are covered in paragraph 3.5 to 3.6 of the report. As part of the preparation, before we officially start the district plan review, the Planning Department has undertaken a call for sites. This call for sites took place between July and September 2024 and invited landowners, developers, agents and site promoters to submit areas of land for the Council to consider whether these would be suitable to help meet the need for housing and other uses across the new plan period. It is worth noting that once a new district plan has been generated from the review process, it will run for 15 years from when it is made, so we'll have a term to the early 2040s rather than only to 2033, as is the limit for the current plan. This is why we need more sites than we have in the current plan. Simply submitting a site through the call for sites does not in any way confirm that it will be selected for allocation in the district plan, and there will be a few stages before decisions can be made about which sites might be the ones that should be developed. This report only details the outcome of the call for sites, i.e. a presentation of the sites submitted and the information submitted with them, and outlines the process that will now be followed. The call for sites yielded a total of 282 site submissions for consideration. The attached appendices give both an overview of the sites as they are distributed across the district and provide a location map and site area outline for every specific entry, alongside the key details of that submission. Since the call for sites report was made public, 2 further sites have been submitted, County Hall in Hertford and one in Buntingford, and these are included as an addendum paper. In addition, 1 site has been withdrawn, so there is now a revised total of 283 sites. Now that the call for sites has been completed and the information for each submission has been collated and summarised, the Council will use the data to move on to the next stage in the plan making process, which is a Strategic Land Availability Assessment, or an SLAA, for the district. The report details the exact process of preparing the SLAA, but it will assess the suitability of sites against planning criteria such as flood risk, heritage setting, access and the like. The planning policy team will begin the process of overview and evaluation of each of the 283 sites, ratifying inconsistent information and getting an up-to-date view on development progress to obtain a better understanding of the deliverability, viability and availability of each site. It will become clear that some submitted sites will not be suitable when national policy and designations are applied and constraints are taken into account. I will bring a report back to members following completion of this initial high-level assessment. From my email inbox, I know that the call for sites has caused some consternation for residents who are either for or against particular sites. At this stage of the process, there is purely mechanical assessment to be undertaken, and as such, any petitions, emails or other correspondence is premature. The Council will be undertaking consultation on the district plan as part of the review process, which starts properly this autumn, and the outline for this is contained within the Local Development Scheme paper from October 2024. So I'd like to propose that we note the call for sites.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank Chris. Right, questions or comments about the paper? Yeah, Sarah.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, you mentioned in your introduction to the paper there about consultation as part of the district plan. Could you say a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, so councillors who are here will know that we did a visioning process last year to provide a vision for the district plan, and we'll be undertaking some engagement on that starting around spring this year, and then there will be 2 consultations on the district plan proper. Assuming we start in September, October this year, then we would have one in summer 2026, which will look at the overview, the local options and priorities, and then a second in the summer of 2027 to look at the proposed sites.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Graham. Graham, microphone.
Could I ask what's the difference between a gross site area and a net site area?
I think that's a deeply technical question, and I'm going to hand that over to the Service Manager for Planning, Policy, Design and Conservation.
Thanks, Vicky. So the gross site area will be the total area of the site, and the net site area will be the area that is capable of being developed. So a site that is a hectare could perhaps, accommodate, I don't know, 0.8 of a hectare of development, and then would be additional. There would be like open space or roads, etc., that would form the rest of the area.
Thank you. Because I know on some, the gross and net are exactly the same as each other.
So the information that's presented in the report is directly from the site promoters. So we've not had an opportunity to verify that information or check any information. So that will be part of the next step of the process. And so we will be looking at all of the site areas that have been proposed. And if there are anomalies like that, we will pick it up at that stage.
Okay. How many houses can you build on an acre? Is it 18, 20, or is that the lower end of the...
Depends on your density. We normally talk about 30 per hectare.
30 per hectare. Because if it's, yeah, that's not too far away. If you've got 18 per acre, I'm just doing Bishop Stortford for gross, it was 7,416, and net it comes down to 4,824. And I appreciate what you've just said. Now, working with the executive member for environment, we are trying to reduce the congestion in Bishop Stortford and the air pollution. And you notice the areas where the houses are proposed sites, I know it's not confirmed yet, will compound the problems within Bishop Stortford. And like the last time, many years ago at the first local plan, when the suggestion was, is it not possible to look at an area to build these houses, not too dissimilar from Harlow Gilson Garden Town? So the infrastructure's there, the proper tight roads there, we're not causing air congestion, etc., etc. And it's at this stage we've obviously got to sow the seeds to get the main thought in process.
That's for me. You're about 2 years too early, I'd say, with that comment. If you look at the previous district plan, there are 18 strategic sites included in the district plan and 288 sites were submitted. We have a relatively similar number submitted now. You appear to be assuming that all the development will be in Bishop Stortford, all the sites that are in Bishop Stortford are the ones that are going to be developed. At this stage, none of those sites could be suitable for development because the assessment hasn't been done yet. So until the assessments have been done, we know which ones are suitable for development, and we've gone through a lot more of the process of doing the district plan. We will not be selecting the sites. So you've taken a gross and a net, multiplied them by the number of houses and assumed that every one of those sites is suitable, and we will be picking every one of those sites and only building in Bishop Stortford, which is not quite where we're at yet.
I haven't
Vic,
assumed I've
Sorry,
indicated.
sorry. Do you want to come back in with another
Yeah,
question?
I haven't assumed, I've only
One more?
indicated, but the main thrust of my conversation this evening is that with
A question is
Stortford,
fine. I don't mind a question.
We've got congestion and
Question.
we need to alleviate that congestion, and to do that, we need to look outside Bishop Stortford for settlements. Will that happen?
We are not going to build only in Bishop Stortford. I can't tell you at the moment where we might be building because the site assessments haven't been done. There's been no discussions with other authorities because I would imagine that we would take quite a lot of guidance from Hertfordshire County Council on this. We haven't looked at infrastructure. None of the information has been looked at. This is simply a submission of the sites. I understand that you don't want things to be built in Bishop Stortford, but we can't give those undertakings until we are a lot further down the road on this.
Thanks, Vicky. I think one of the key points perhaps is that there is joint strategic planning going on at the moment that started with North East Central Herts, which is obviously us and our neighbours in North East Central area. It's happened already in South West. So though the big strategic plans for across the county are already going on, which is separate from obviously from the district plan. The district plan presumably will be fed into those. Yeah, okay. But, God, sorry, Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, just a quick question. Is this the call for sites that recently happened? Is that the only opportunity for sites to be submitted?
No. Last time there was more than one call for sites because the district plan itself will take about 2.5 years to do toe to tail. We would expect to do another call for sites potentially in about a year's time just to check that we've got everything that is out there. This is pre-work so that the planning department can get through the very, very, very laborious task of assessing each one of those sites, checking that all the information is correct and doing the assessments. So we've got a bit of a running start when we go in autumn.
Alex.
So I know that we're only in the preparation stage at the moment of the district plan, but do we know how many sites got rejected last time because they weren't suitable? What sort of percentage?
I think I'd have to come over to the service manager again, because that is not one I know offhand.
I'm not sure I know the answer offhand, but as Vicky referred to earlier when she introduced the paper, we had 288 site submissions last time. We allocated 18 strategic sites within the plan. Some of those other suggested sites through the call for sites would have come forward through the sort of the development management, the planning application process, but certainly we didn't allocate anywhere near the 288 that came forward. And as I say, that comes down to site suitability and also strategy decisions, which Councillor Glover-Ward touched on in her response to Councillor McAndrew. We need to look at those strategy options for the district as a whole, and the SHLAR process will feed into that.
Yvonne. Yvonne.
Thank you. Just process questions, really. In the proposed land use column, were those all tick boxes? The same terms seem to appear throughout, so I just wanted to check that. And then secondly, when renewable energy is in that column, does that mean solar, or does it have any particular meaning? And then thirdly, I imagine, is it true to say that the planning service will continue and may indeed identify land itself, which is not in the call for sites?
I will hand over to the service manager on that, because those again are quite technical questions. I know that there's a potential for looking at other sites when out and about as doing the SLAR assessments.
Thank you. So in terms of the form that site promoters were able to fill in, there were a series of boxes which set out a series of uses, but there was an opportunity for sort of free text to be put in associated with that box. So some may have just ticked a box, some may have provided further detail in respect of that box. So for example, for renewable energy, it's not one particular type of renewable energy. You could have put in further information if that's what the site promoter wanted to do. So we do have all the raw data that obviously sits behind what you're looking at today. So we have got a little bit more information in terms of what is being proposed under different uses. And then as Councillor Glover-Ward said, in terms of other sites, then yes, absolutely, when the team are out and about, looking at the 283, I think now that have been submitted, we will be looking for other opportunities. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to demonstrate that those sites are available and that they are deliverable. So we can't just put a line around a plan, identify a site if we don't have a willing site promoter. Thank you.
Great. Well, we've had a good discussion. The recommendations for this item are detailed on page 242 of the agenda pack. I'll read them out for clarity. So the recommendation is that the call for sites submissions be noted and agreed for evaluation through the strategic land availability assessment, and B, the results of the strategic land availability assessment be reported in due course. So could I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Great. And planning team, please feel free to leave. Thank you. Right, we'll move back now to item 5, which is the budget 2025 to 2026 and medium-term financial plan 2025 to 2035. And that's on pages 13 to 50 of the agenda pack. And I'll hand over to Councillor Carl Britton, Executive Member for Financial Sustainability.
Thank you, Leader. This report presents the final budget for 25-26, along with the medium-term financial plan for 2025 to 2035 in Appendix A. Despite the uncertainty around the future of East Arts District Council following the English Devolution White Paper, it's still a requirement for this council to set a balanced budget and to produce a medium-term financial plan. The report presents a balanced budget for 25-26 with a small £6,000 surplus. The base case medium-term financial plan was shared with the Executive in October 2024, and this showed at the time a budget gap of approximately £2 million. The base budgets, statutory and non-statutory services have been reviewed in detail, and savings options considered and discussed by both the leadership team in meetings and in joint meetings with the Executive. These meetings resulted in the identification of a further £1.46 million of officer delegated savings and £492,000 of member recommended savings, and these are detailed in Appendices B and C. The savings proposals were presented to the Joint Audit and Governance and Overview and Scrutiny meeting on January the 29th, and the comments made are listed in Appendix F. The Appendices B and C also show the savings proposals agreed in the 24-25 budget that are to be implemented in 25-26. These are shown in the top half of the papers. Some of these have by necessity been adjusted where the planned savings could not be achieved in the timescale. Also detailed in Appendix C are the suggestions that were rejected by the Executive. These include the reduction or cessation of planning enforcement or the reduction or cessation of the grant to citizens' advice. The major changes to the latest medium-term financial plan from last year are shown in sections 1.6 to 1.66 of the report. Of particular note here include gains from the extended producer responsibility payment, the lower than expected pay award, and the reduction in capital expenditure charged to revenue accounts. However, these are offset by a reduction in the income forecast for Beam and a rise in the employer's national insurance and the ongoing rates liability for Charrington's House. Further work is also currently being undertaken on the Council's MRP policy. It is believed that changes to this might generate new savings which can be used to boost the interest equalisation reserve, which is currently earmarked for use in offsetting capital shortfalls from the Council's property investments, which are currently in the process of being wound down. On council tax, the medium-term financial plan is based on a 2.98% increase, which is the maximum allowed without a referendum. The ongoing pressures of high interest rates and the continuing lack of adequate funding from the government leave the council with little choice. The new level of council tax will be £201.04 for a BAM D property, or just £3.86 per week. It should be emphasised at this stage that this budget requires all the planned savings to be realised. In order to achieve this balanced budget, we have had to draw £164,000 from earmarked reserves, with no plan to add to our reserves. This means there is little to fall back on should the savings not materialise as planned. The leadership team will meet regularly to review the savings plans and identify issues as they arise. The other risk lies with the performance of Beam and whether it can generate the anticipated surplus. The business plan for Beam is still being reviewed, but the recently appointed Commercial and Cultural Development Manager believes the proposed income target is very realistic and is fully committed to achieving it. Looking beyond 25-26 in the medium-term financial plan, there is a £1.7 million shortfall in 26-27, and new options to bridge this gap will need to be identified. Work is already being undertaken to review the MRP, along with capitalisation of interest costs accrued during the construction phases of capital projects. New transformation options to drive efficiency savings are also being considered. It should be noted at this point that if the Council's income from business rates were to stay at the 25-26 level, The medium-term financial plan in the future would show a surplus rather than a deficit. The capital programme is detailed in section 1.9 of the report and Appendix D. The programme is the maximum affordable. There is currently no scope for any additional unfunded schemes. From 27-28, the only schemes proposed are investments in operational assets and the ICT rolling programme. New capital schemes will only become affordable when there is headroom within the revenue account to cover the interest and MLP costs. The existing programme will be funded by external grants, capital receipts and new loans. The schedule of fees and charges is included in Appendix E. These have been reviewed by officers and amended in line with our fees and charges policy for cost recovery. The recommendations are shown at the top of page 2 of the report or page 14 of the reports pack. I'd like to propose this report.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please? Tim, thank you very much. So it's open for questions. Any questions? Great.
Thank you very much. The appendix for the report from scrutiny is lacking a lot of detail. I raised that with the chairman and he said he would take it up, but I believe Councillor Jacobs also sort of agrees with me on that. We had a long conversation on numerous topics and they just haven't been recorded at all. I just want to sort of emphasise that sort of point. But Cal, I wonder if you can help me again, please. You've got the annual waste contract and it's year on year increase. You do 30,000 one year to 60,000 a year after to 90,000 the year after. And I believe you say that's under the contract price index or whatever. What is that percentage?
Not exactly sure of the number. That's obviously an estimate based on contract inflation. I would take a guess at something like 3%, but I don't know whether, Matthew, have you got an exact figure that you've estimated?
I don't have the exact figure to hand, but it will be variable over the years. Sorry, I don't have the exact figure to hand of what we actually based it on, but it will be a variable one that will go up and down, and I would have to check what we based that on.
Right, I can tell you what you've based it on. Year 1 is 1.7%, year 2 is 1.67%, year 3 is 1.65%. I'm happy to be corrected.
Yeah, those figures do sound quite low.
Sorry, I honestly don't have the figures to hand of what the estimate was based on. I will have to provide the information later.
Yeah, I did have in my head that the garden waste brought approximately 1.5 million. They kind of suggest about 2%, does it?
Can we confirm that it's 30,000 houses? That's what was in the executive paper, 30,000 houses. Yeah. So 30,000 times 59, it comes to 1.77, £1,770,000. Need to understand the accuracy of the figures. It's in the budget.
Jess, sorry.
If I just come in quickly,
of course.
so just a
Sorry.
couple of quick answers. So in relation to contract inflation, it's based on general CPI, fuel index, as well as labour costs. So for the waste contract, we won't know what they are exactly until May, which is when the contract changes. In relation to the contract inflation cost that's built into the MTFP as a minimum, that's built based on £1 increase per year. Obviously, inflation is likely to be more than that based on labour costs going up. I don't know if that's helpful at all for now.
I understand that, but I'm looking at inflation for the past 3 years. It was used to calculate the increase, and this seems far below the increase.
I think that's likely to be correct though, because I think we had quite a large amount of inflation in 2020 to 2022. Inflation was running at over 10%, and contract inflation, I think, possibly even higher than that. So I think I would expect these numbers to be much lower, because I think the forecast going forward is for it to be much lower. But it is only a forecast, and yeah, we obviously have to put a number in here, and I think this is based on around about 2%. So I think your original estimate 1.6 is close. It might not be exactly right, but I think it's right that this is lower than it would have been over the past 4 years.
Okay, thank
The
you.
figures, inflation rate hasn't been.
Okay, have you got another question?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
I
okay,
do.
one more, and we'll move on.
I would like this broken down and given the rationale behind the increment model.
Sorry, but what would you like broken down?
The percentage increase and why it was put in there, because what the officers just said will mean that the percentage increase should be much higher than what it actually is.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, if I just clarify.
Yeah.
There's two figures we're potentially talking about. So the £10 uplift, there's a separate paper that breaks down the contract inflation from year on year. So the year that we talked about, that might have been 10%, that was 9.9. So that takes that into account. And then the other element is the contract inflation year on year after the £10 increase. And like it's, from an estimate point of view, that's been put in as £1. We won't know the actuals until May, which is when we calculate the contract inflation, which will apply for the following financial year.
So it can be provided in May, is what you're saying. Did you want to come in?
Sorry, that's it. All I was going to actually say is it literally is £1 per year. The notes actually say it's just £1 as a holding figure.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, right. Now, at the overview and scrutiny meeting the other evening, it was indicated that the charge was to cover the cost of the service. Yeah. Now, in January 21, when I presented a paper, the cost of the service was 821,000. You're now saying it is over double that amount to 1,770,000. Can we give a reason for that? I would like to see the figures.
I don't have the figures from 2021.
Maybe I
Tim,
can
would you like
contribute.
to come in?
I think it would be enormously helpful, Graham, if you could page reference so we can all be looking at the same numbers at the same time, rather than just tripping them off. I think it might be helpful to have a look at the first slide, if we could, which I think is the one that you were referring to, Graham, when you were talking about the incremental increases over the years. And this is part of the justification for getting to £59 a year. So that's available, and it has been available and was presented previously for scrutiny. And indeed a question you asked at scrutiny previously. So that's the justification there. This is a catch-up exercise. It's one where inflation and the rising costs of delivery were not applied by previous administrations, and we're playing catch-up in order to be able to get there. You talk about whether that or not that's in line with any set of external figures. Here are the figures that have been applied, and these are sourceable through CPI. You can do the research and verify that if you so wish. So I'm not sure what extra breakdown we can provide.
I can explain. I understand what you've done there. What I'm saying is that the other evening we were told that the charge was to cover the cost of the service. in 2021, the cost of that service was £821,000. The cost of that service now is £1,770,000. I'd like to understand, I'd like to see the breakdown of that cost. Because you're telling me one thing and the reality is something different.
Well, I don't think we're telling you two different things. I think we're saying that's exactly the case. That here is a catch-up on costs, which arrives at a figure of £59.81, which we've actually charging £59 for. And that's the result of trying to recover our costs of delivering a service within that we're having to provide to the people who elect for this service. I'm not sure that any other breakdown will actually assist in that calculation, but I'll stand correct.
Okay.
Tim, I appreciate that, but you wasn't at the overview and scrutiny the other evening when I was told this was the actual cost of the service. And
Okay.
I'm trying to understand why it costs 821,000 in 2021, and now you're trying to say it's 1,770,000. That's what Carol and the finance officer said.
Okay, yeah.
It's there on the recording.
Right.
So I'm not sure about this 800,000 cost in 2021. Does that cost include the additional costs of recovery, or is that just the pure cost of the service? Because obviously we have to take into account the cost of recovery as well.
That is annual ongoing expenditure.
So it may be that the cost you're referring to is just the direct cost of the service, which is not necessarily the cost to the council. The council may incur extra costs than that in terms of officer time and also particularly going forward with the collection of the charges.
Okay. Well, we can. I think. Yeah, I think if you can provide a breakdown, Graham, pass it on, and then perhaps we can come back to you with an answer outside of this meeting. I don't want this meeting to drag on. Okay. Well, I think you've had more than your fair. I think we'll move to David.
Thank you. Wanted to take us back some time to Councillor McAndrew's original point regarding the summary of the overview and scrutiny and Audit and Governance Joint Committee. I appreciate that report was done in relatively short order in order to be available for this meeting, but I'd agree it doesn't provide a comprehensive view of what was discussed at the joint scrutiny meeting, and I would ask that for meeting of full council that document's reviewed and amplified to give full credit to what was discussed. It was a very good, very healthy and thorough meeting, and it gave a good look at the budget, and it'd be disappointing to lose those comments. And just as one example, there is a budget saving for reviewing receptions, customer service review receptions, which I think in the draft we saw was expressed as closing receptions. But in the current papers for us on page 28, it's expressed as a review. Some £40,000 a year from next year. That was kind of thing that was challenged, and it would be good to see that reflected in the paper that goes to full council.
Sure, we can do that. That's not a problem. Okay. Graham, are you going to come back to the same topic, or are we going to move on?
Yes, I'm coming back.
If you're coming back to the same topic, I think we've already said that we can provide a response if you provide the details.
Same topic, but a different part of the
Okay,
topic.
right.
We've just held that there's 30,000 households that this charge is attributable to. Last year in 2024, there was 1,387 houses built, which means an extra £59 per household, or if you take it, 60% of those households. So if you apply that figure for the following 4 years, that comes to an extra 3,328 houses at 60%, and that will give a total income, more income, of £201,392, which hasn't been accounted for.
I think that sounds to me like a fair point that with extra houses there will be extra income. That's perhaps something we can look at, unless you think you've already taken into account somewhere.
Can I just say, just because the households have been built, that doesn't mean every household is going to be opting into the waste collection service for the garden waste. So I don't think we can kind of make the assumption that that's going to be the case, that there will definitely be that extra income, because many might not opt in.
It's also worth pointing out that, and you know, the challenge is that we've got a cost recovery right. Let's assume we have got our cost recovery right, because that's the paper we're putting forward. Any extra volume will just recover its costs. It will not make it additional monies. The gross will go up, but the net will stay the same. We will just recover our monies. So that the basis of volume is sort of irrelevant within this discussion.
Right. Go on.
Page 31, there's a list of proposed changes to charges. Minor pre-application advice, household and listed building advice goes down from 350 to 218. Is that a typo?
I don't have the answer to this. I'm not sure if anyone else can help with that.
Can you say which one it was again? Just to repeat.
Yeah,
It was the
householder and listed building. Second one in the table. Householder and listed building advice, written advice only. If you scroll across.
what page is that? Sorry.
31.
31.
Scroll across, the current charge is 350 and the proposed 25-26 charge is 218. I think that's a typo because it's the figure above copied, transposed. But given that we're publishing these, I think we should probably pick that up.
Okay, officers can look at that. Thank you. Yeah, Bob.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to align myself with David's comments of a few minutes ago apropos the overview and scrutiny meeting the other day. I think we all felt it was a good discussion. There was quite a lot of challenge in there. At the end of the meeting, it was specifically put to the chairman, and the chairman acknowledged that by virtue of the matters in question running through that committee on that particular evening, that did not mean that they were necessarily approved or agreed. And I think it's very important that we register that, because obviously we have a full council meeting coming up, and there are obviously some a number of questions, for example, in relation to waste charges, green waste charges, which we certainly will wish to raise at full council. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Okay. Right. I think we will move on at this point. We've had a discussion. I think the recommendation for this item is detailed on page 14 of the agenda pack. Can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you're in favour or against, please? All in favour, please. Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. Right, we're going to move on to item 6, the capital strategy, minimum revenue provision policy and treasury strategy 2025 to 2026, which is on pages 51 to 98 of the agenda pack. And it's back to Councillor Carl Britton to present it.
Thank you, Leader. So capital strategy is detailed in Appendix A. The Council is planning capital spending of 10.545 million in 25-26, with the bulk of this for vehicles and bins for the new waste contract. The majority of this spend will be financed by new debt, with smaller amounts being financed by external grants and capital receipts, as detailed in Table 2 of the strategy report. Debt, however, is only a temporary source of finance, and charges must be made through the minimum revenue provision over the life of an asset, where borrowing has supported the asset purchase. Capital receipts can also be used to replace debt finance, and the planned replacement of debt finance is shown in Table 3 in the strategy report. Table 4 shows the forecast total outstanding debt finance, known as the capital financing requirement. We should note that 25-26 represents the peak of council borrowing. In future years, these borrowings should begin to reduce as a result of capital receipts and the minimum revenue provision and the very limited capital expenditure programme. Forecast capital receipts are summarised in Table 5. Some of these will be used to reduce debt, but a proportion will be held in reserve as shown in Table 6. This could be used for the specific costs of transformation projects. Appendix B is the Council's minimum revenue provision statement. New regulations are due to come into force on April the 1st, 2025, but our advisors do not expect the changes to have any significant effect on the Council. Appendix C is the Treasury Management Strategy. The Council has borrowed and invested significant sums of money. It is therefore essential that the Council manages the inherent risks in these activities. The Treasury Management function also needs to manage the Council's cash flows to ensure the correct funds are available at the point when they are needed. This report provides detail on the external economic factors that may impact the Council. It also details the borrowing strategy and the investment strategy employed by the Council to ensure the financial risks are managed prudently. Treasury management is conducted within the framework of the SIPFA Code, and this report fulfils the Council's legal obligation under the Local Government Act 2003 to have regard to the SIPFA Code. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you're happy to propose this. Thank you. Okay, could I have a seconder, please? Chris, thank you very much. Right, comments, questions. Has anyone got a comment or a question they want to put to Carl? No. I think that's great. All right. Well, thank you very much. So the recommendation for this item is detailed on page 51 of the agenda pack. Please, can we have a show of hands for all those in favour? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's passed. Thank you very much. Right, we're coming now to item 7, which is the authority to dispose of assets by sale, which is on pages 99 to 120 of the agenda pack. Just a reminder that Appendix B is restricted. So I'll hand over to Councillor Carl Britton again.
Thank you, Leader. This report details 3 assets, one already approved for sale, with 2 new ones being brought forward. Item A is the flats at Northgate End. These are already approved for sale, but this paper seeks authority to dispose of the entire block to a single buyer. Disposal on this basis is predicated on the Council gaining planning consent to replace the requirement for on-site affordable housing provision with a commuted sum that could be used at another site to provide social rent housing and/or temporary accommodation to minimise the use of bed and breakfast accommodation for homeless people. There are potentially many advantages to this approach. Firstly, it simplifies the sale process, removing the risk that some flats might be very difficult to sell. Secondly, it potentially brings forward the date of the capital receipt, which may help the Council avoid additional borrowing, particularly with regard to expenditure on the new waste contract. Thirdly, it could relieve the Council liability for managing the block to an end earlier, resulting in a direct cost saving. 3 options have been modelled, described in section 3.5 of the report, with scenario C representing this proposal to sell the property in one block. The financial details of the proposals are detailed in exempt Appendix B. These show that scenario C does in fact result in the best financial outcome overall for the Council over a 2.5-year horizon. In section 3.14 of the report, the impact of the commuted sum is considered. If consent is given, this could result in substantially reduced rents for more than 20 properties when utilised in line with the current rent reduction scheme. Item B in this report is land at Leiston Court Gardens, which is proposed the freehold be sold to Buntingford Town Council. Currently, the land is managed by Buntingford Town Council, and East Herts pay a fee for this service. East Herts are also liable for tree surveying each year. Selling this site will enable the council to reduce its level of debt and also reduce ongoing liabilities. The use of the land as park gardens is protected under the Open Spaces Act 1906. Buntingford Town Council have agreed the price shown in exempt Appendix B. Item C is a parcel of land at West Street, Hertford, currently released to Hertford Football Club. They have asked to purchase the freehold so that they can make longer term investments in the site, which will bring benefit to both the club and the surrounding community. This site brings in a small income for the council, but also has brought with it a number of associated costs in officer time detailed in the report. The proposed sale of the freehold would contain a further new covenant that the land shall only be used as a sports club, with East Herts Council being the beneficiary of the covenant. A purchase price has not yet been agreed. It is anticipated that an independent valuation will be sought, as the valuation is more complex than is typical. The recommendations for the three sites are on page 99 of the agenda pack. I'd like to propose this report and can take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please? Oh, Marnie, thank you very much. Yeah, questions. Yeah, Joe.
Thank you, Leader. Carl, I know it's detailed quite explicitly in the papers and you've touched on it in your introduction, but I know some residents in Hertford might be concerned with regards to the football club, which when we talk about social value is a wonderful community asset, you know, provides lots of enjoyment for people. They've got the academy. They had a sellout crowd recently when the youth team almost beat Arsenal. So it provides a huge, you know, it's a huge part of people's lives and a huge part of the town. Can you just clarify so people can be absolutely sure there's only one potential purchaser and that's the people that are already there, and that the covenant will mean that they or nobody else will be able to demolish it and build houses and change the use and remove the football club facilities?
Yes, I believe that to be case. There is only one potential purchaser, and it's protected as a sports club.
Thank you very much.
Chris? Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, I welcome the proposal for Northgate End, especially with the chance of having the commuted sums for more affordable housing, which is very difficult to get genuinely affordable housing in East Herts, and something we desperately need. Secondly, I just have a question to add to the point regarding the economic benefits of selling in the whole lot in one go, is regarding what costs do we actually incur at the moment at Northgate End by ownership of it and by it being vacant, and if there could be a approximate breakdown of those costs, I'd be grateful.
I'm not sure I've got the details of the exact costs. I'd have to pass that over to Jonathan, but essentially, I mean, there will be maintenance, security, rates. Have you got anything to add there?
There's some detail in the exempt report, so I'm not going to go into that. We have got in great detail the exact overall figure per year, which is a six-figure sum, and it is broken down into essentially council tax for empty properties, gardening and guards to look after empty properties, and associated utilities and such like. And the figures are in the exempt report, so I won't go into detail. I can provide to all members that exact breakdown. I've got that in great detail.
Thank you.
Marnie.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I welcome this report, and especially the item about selling the Northgate End residential units. I do think it is really, really essential that we get the planning consent changed so that it is possible not to actually provide affordable housing there, but instead to give a commuted sum. And I really, really think we must ensure that that happens before the sale takes place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bob.
Thank you very much. I just want to speak to the football ground issue, West Street. I dare say there are other people in the room that are aware but the the traffic situation in West Street is very, very difficult. And if I might just say, I played a lot of sport when I was younger. We are kind of a sporting family. I believe in sport. It's a very good thing for all sorts of reasons. But there is absolutely no question that the progression of the football club, so that it now uses an artificial pitch, has led to much greater usage. That in turn has led to a real increase in traffic. If the ground is developed further, this is just going to continue and continue. So on behalf of the residents of West Street, I'd like it to be noted, minuted, that this would be of considerable concern to the residents of West Street. If this transfer of or this property deal is to happen, I think it is almost imperative that a way is found to do the best this council can possibly do for the residents of West Street. Maybe this is just a little bit anecdotal, but that there's absolutely no question at all that a very simple thing that the football club could already do is post stewards to direct traffic leaving the club in particular, so that traffic does not go down West Street. It takes the right turn at the top and goes out towards Hornsmill. I mean, I appreciate it's very easy for me to sit here, and most people in this room won't be familiar with this, but it's a real concern to the residents of West Street. I think this must be taken into account. Could I just ask one different question, but in relation to the football club? It says in the paper that the purchaser will be the existing leaseholder. Do you mind if I just slightly press on that? Is that definitely right, or will there be some form of different entity that will emerge as the purchaser of the ground?
As far as our initial discussions, it is the existing leaseholder. Whether I don't know, Councillor, whether and this essentially the way that we framed the recommendation that Councillor Britton's put forward, essentially is the in principle support to dispose, subject to negotiation, the price and terms. Now, if during that discussion and negotiation, the existing leaseholder, the club, puts forward some other entity, some other form of company or whatever, that will be taken into account. If that in any way disadvantages the council, then we wouldn't wish to go forward on that. But at the moment, I have no reason to believe that it's not the current leaseholder.
I'm sure you appreciate the reason why I make this point. I mean, in as much as I know the residents of West Street, I also know the football club. I'm not casting any aspersions to the members of the football club at all. They are absolutely trying to build a football club of which Hertford can be proud. But if in the future there were to be issues and enforcement is required, it's obviously crucial that we know who we would be enforcing against. So the identity of the purchaser is a very important issue, I think, and it needs to be looked at very, very carefully. Thank you.
Okay.
So I was walking with the ward councillor past the football club today. One of the things that was pointed out to me is that there has been several requests to the county council to paint double yellow lines opposite the entrance, because sometimes cars park there, and then I imagine the big coaches and so on have to turn left down West Street. So that really needs sorting out, and I think it would be good if that point could be raised with the relevant councillor.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is very much a multi-council challenge, isn't it? It's not just one council. Clearly, it needs a joined-up approach to try and solve this, as you rightly say, Bob. Joe.
So it's going back to my original question, I think. So can we be sure that it's being sold to the existing leaseholder? It's in the papers. So I just want to be clear, are we voting on that it's the recommendation is to the existing leaseholder, or is there some indicated potentially some wriggle room there? So I just want to make sure that we know exactly what we're voting on.
If I may, just to be absolutely clear, The administration is keen to expedite disposals for all the reasons we've just been looking at. And so this is coming, Councillor Britton's bringing this forward. It's, as I say, almost in principle, because what it is saying is this would essentially in principle disposal to the existing leaseholder. Then there will need to be an independent valuation, discussion about price, discussion about terms. If at any stage along that journey there is any change to what entity and what format and which funding or whatever the current leaseholder is putting forward, and the council thought that was not that in any way disadvantage to the council happen, that would be taken into account and potentially, not progress. The recommendation, and it makes clear in that recommendation that it would be delegated to Councillor Britton to make that final decision. So in a way, it's essentially an in principle on the basis of starting a negotiation with the current leaseholder for the freehold disposal. It's not this doesn't bind the council. Voting on that recommendation wouldn't bind the council to that disposal. That would then sit with Councillor Britton, who could deal with that and determine that decision in any way, bring it back to exec or whatever. So this is essentially, I would say to members of the executive to think of it as an in principle to commence that process.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. If I could just come back on Councillor Dahl's comments. There are a lot of, clearly some people in this room do know about West Street, so I'm sorry for others. There are a number of intrinsically difficult issues in West Street. And it is absolutely right to say that as the County Councillor for West Street, I've been working with officers for a long time now to try and overcome some of these issues. And I've, over the years, together with my predecessor, former Councillor Ruffles, we've got yellow lines in and 20-mile-an-hour signs and all that sort of thing. Ultimately, it comes down to the volume of traffic. And the volume of traffic, as I said, try to be brief, has absolutely definitely increased since they put the all-weather pitch in, because they get, in principle, 24/7 usage out of the site now. So if they develop the ground, and I absolutely repeat that I'm a believer in sport, etc., 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 it's impossible to see actually that there won't be an increase in traffic, and that is the nub of the problem, and it's very, very acute and very stressful for the residents of West Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, and it's a real problem. This assumption that we drive everywhere is at the heart of our traffic issues, our congestion issues, our air quality issues. So I think separately to any decision about trying to sell the freehold on a piece of land that's currently used for sporting purposes, is to try and couple that with an encouragement for Hertford Football Club to have a sustainable travel plan. It's a local club, presumably. It's not like Manchester United where they're travelling from China to see the match. Well, they might be. I don't know. Maybe it's that popular. Maybe they've done a good job. But it's a local team. I presume most of the traffic is local, apart from obviously the way traffic. And that we should be working hard with Hertford Town Football Club to try and get sustainable travel patterns in place.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. I'll try and keep us out of part two if I can. I'm looking at I wanted to take us back to the Northgate End Flats, and I'm looking at the table on page 116, summary of model capital receipts. I have a couple of questions. The reason why I'm dwelling on this is stating the obvious, really, but we're going to sell an asset of £4 million. We need to be absolutely sure it's the right thing to do. This table appears to me to be saying that under scenario A, which is the current disposal strategy, we would have receipts of 4.3 million.
I think we should probably move into part B, I think, if we're going to talk about figures.
It's a document that you've published already. I'm just reading the document.
It's exempt. We'll stop there and we'll move into part B if you want to discuss those.
Okay.
All
right. That
right.
was in part.
I've got to read. Yes, you want to continue. Right. So I will move that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. The press and public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of Appendix B on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information falling within paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. So I'm proposing that. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Vicky. And can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you support the motion to exclude press and public? Lovely. Thank you very much. That's carried. Is the web Great. So we're webcasting again. Any other questions? No. Okay. So the recommendations for this item are detailed on pages 99 and 100 of the agenda pack. Please, could I have a show of hands to indicate all those in favour, please? Thank you very much. Anyone abstaining or against? No, that's passed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item 8, which is the Parking Strategy 2025, which is on pages 121 to 241 of the agenda pack. And I'll hand over to Councillor Tim Hoskin, Exec Member for Environmental Sustainability.
Thanks, Leader. This report presents to exec members the draft version of the parking strategy for East Herts, following the public consultation and engagement which took place in the autumn last year. There are 3 recommendations contained, but I'll come back to those at the end if I could. So by way of background, in February 2024, the Council approved a 1.75 income target for parking for the financial years 25-26 to 27 and 28. And this strategy sets the strategic context and the principles by which changes may be approved to support the achievement of income and wider ambitions of the Council. In response to the climate emergency and in alignment with East Herts' new corporate plan, this parking strategy has been designed to ensure the Council effectively manages parking demand while addressing the challenges of population growth and the high rates of car ownership, higher within East Herts than nationally. The Council aims to discourage inessential car journeys and promote more sustainable alternatives, particularly for short trips. And this will be critical in reducing congestion, optimising parking spaces, and tackling issues such as air pollution, climate change, road safety and health in terms of active travel. So in August last year, we commissioned, the officers commissioned CitySense, a commercial organisation, to support the development of the strategy. And following the adoption of the Listening Council principles, there was a strong focus on resident and business engagement prior to the strategy. So we had an extensive process and you know, very encouragingly, we had over 1,700 responses through our online public engagement and our in-person sessions in autumn last year. And you can see the consultation report in Appendix A. Three key strategic aims of the parking strategy are centred around sustainability, community well-being and economic prosperity, which all link back to the corporate plan and other associated strategies which are listed on page 6. And in a number of areas, pricing is being used as a tool to motivate behavioural change. The strategic aims have guided 3 key objectives which determine the actions for delivery: alternative, balanced and considerate, ABC. Alternative, we want to support motorists to consider alternatives, whether that be to take up a more environmentally friendly vehicles and sustainable alternatives to driving, such as active travel. Balanced, to take a more balanced approach to parking by making changes to it to make it fairer and easier and more consistent across East Herts. And considerate, adopting a more environmentally considerate approach to managing parking services. And you'll see some of those manifest themselves in the upcoming enforcement contract, which is due to be tendered later on this year. There are 22 actions which have been set in place across short, medium and long term. And these actions range from altering pricing structures, which is part of these recommendations, to abolishing the use of paper-based permits, part of the environmental approach. And this strategy will function as an evolving framework. If we've got it right, it will shape the way we go for a number of years. And I know that seems slightly weird, given you know, the district may not exist, but hopefully, if we've got it right, this will have an enduring legacy in terms of how we manage parking or how parking is managed within this area. To be successful, we have to be a range of roles. We can't be all things. We can be a direct deliverer for change, and that's in some of the things that we control. We can act as a facilitator for change, and we can play a lobbying role for change. And those will be key to being able to influence the results of this strategy. The strategy was presented at overview and scrutiny on the 14th of January 2025, and there were a range of comments which I hope fully record the discussions that happened. You can see those in Appendix F. There were some concerns around affordability regarding the emissions-based parking scheme, and officers will investigate how other authorities have perhaps implemented that idea and be able to feed back ultimately into the strategy. Lots of valid points were raised. One about the opening hours of Northgate End, which could prevent some local business and workers to use it prior to 7 AM. And again, we'll take that away and explore that separately. Feedback on the sale or commercialisation of car parks were also raised, as well as a lot of detailed comments on the parking tariffs themselves. Overall, there was support for the concepts described in the parking strategy, and there was an understanding that there are a number of initiatives which will require further consideration and public consultation before making decisions for implementation. The review of the resident parking zone scheme was raised, and there's an initial draft in Appendix G where you can see some of the proposed changes there, which will be layered within the strategy. And officers will work towards developing this further into a revised policy following feedback when it's discussed at full council. So I propose this paper and its recommendation for discussion and approval to this meeting.
Thank you very much, Tim. Could I have a second? Vicky, thank you very much. Can I just start by saying I think this is a great document. I think there's been some fantastic work that's gone into this. And I know we all want to thank the parking team and Jess for all the hard work. Going along to the consultation meetings, it's always tough. And I think they were incredibly constructive and really positive. And I think much of that is down to the team here. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Questions, comments? Joe.
Thank you, Leader. So as an executive member of this council, I do understand it's my duty to act in the best interests of our entire district and all of our residents, which is why I'm supporting the overall parking strategy. Sometimes our responsibility means we have to make decisions that may not always be popular with our residents. And as a Liberal Democrat, I have a deep commitment to fairness. And fairness is a value that I incorporate into every decision that I make. I'm talking specifically about the High Street car park in Stanstead Abbots. And for several years, the High Street car park was subsidised by a generous private donation. This meant that residents and visitors did not have to pay to park when they visited the car park. When that very generous donation expired, a recommendation came before this executive to make changes so that people would need to pay for parking in the High Street car park in the absence of that private funding. Some people made representations arguing that this was unfair, especially in car parks in Buntingford and Sawbridgeworth, which are also classified as local car parks, did not have to pay for weekend parking. At the time, I voted in favour of introducing those charges, including at weekends, because I believe that this wider review of our parking strategy will bring fairness and ensure all local car parks are aligned. I accepted there would be a short period when some car parks operated under different rules within that group, but I believe this would be temporary and a short period of time. Based on that understanding, I made what I believed was the responsible decision. However, now that the parking strategy has come before the executive again, we can see that weekend charges have not been aligned across the board or across that group. I have learned that due to the bureaucracy of traffic regulation orders, this alignment could take potentially up to 18 months, maybe longer. I'm unsure of why this excessive time period is required, but I'm told it is. More importantly, it means that an unfair discrepancy will remain for an extended period of time. I do not believe this is right. If fairness and responsibility was the principle behind my original decision, then fairness must guide me now. The logical and responsible step would be to pause weekend charges in Stanstead Abbots until all car parks can be aligned. That would be a fair and a coherent strategy. Those who may argue that I'm prioritising my own ward, I want to be very clear. I take my financial responsibilities as an executive member of this council very seriously. But the facts speak for themselves. The income from the High Street car park is already projected to exceed expectations by around £10,000 a year. Suspending weekend charges in St Abbots would not jeopardise the council's financial sustainability or the strategy achieving its financial goals. I regret the executive member does not share my view. Given the circumstances, I cannot support this recommendation as it stands. Fairness should be something we not only aspire to, it should be something we actively uphold. Therefore, I'll be voting against this recommendation C.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jane. Marnie.
Thank you, Leader. I would like to speak in agreement with Councillor Dumont. We are both in support of the parking strategy overall, which has been presented tonight by Councillor Hoskin. But what we cannot support is one of the details of the proposed charges. We cannot support the proposed charge for Sunday parking at Stansted Abbots. There are two other local community car parks in East Harts, one in Buntingford and one in Strawbridgeworth. At neither of these are there charges for Saturday or Sunday parking. And we think it to be grossly unfair for the people of Stansted Abbots that they have to pay on these 2 days. Now, we acknowledge and know that there was an anomaly last year when charges were first introduced in Stansted Abbots. But I and many others were led to believe that everything would be made equal and fair once the parking consultation had taken place and the new parking strategy had been developed. However, this has not happened, and the unfairness is still proposed to continue. We do understand that nothing can be done about the Saturday charge because of legal reasons and the traffic regulation order. But we do think that something could be done about the Sunday charge. I do believe it is within the power of the executive member to set this charge at nil. But if he is not willing to do this, then I'm afraid that I will vote against the third recommendation before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I very much enjoyed speaking to residents regarding the parking strategy, and we did hear a lot of different views, and that's really wanted to explain why I'm also going to be voting alongside Councillor Dumont and Councillor Goldspink, is that one of those views that was very clear throughout all the meetings was that differential parking according to the different offers of each town, and in this case village, was something that everyone pretty much agreed with was fair. And as fairness has been mentioned, that's what I come back to, that it's not just Councillor Dumont and others that think it's not fair, it's also residents as a whole across East Harts, not just Stansted Abbots, think that where you have a car park that has a better offering, in a sense, that more things to see, more things to go and visit, such as Hertford or Bishop Stortford or Ware, then that should have a higher charge than Strawbridgeworth, Buntingford and Stansted Abbots. And Strawbridgeworth, Buntingford and Stansted Abbots are more equivalent, and therefore at the moment there's an unfairness in the mismatch of charges on the Sunday. So I would be supporting what Councillor Dumont and Councillor Goldspink said.
Okay, thank you. Thank Chris. Tim.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for those comments. I think that's interesting and noted. I think it's worth just trying to backtrack a little bit to where we're trying to get to. So, as Joe said, that this is about trying to implement fairness. Now, the raw mechanics of the machinery is that we cannot do that overnight. We cannot do that within an instant. And if that was, you know, if I've misled anybody along the timings, then you have my personal apology. I was firmly of the belief that this is a staged process, and I mentioned the short, medium and long-term timeframes. The changes to structural charging within a car park, i.e. not just the rates, but when we can charge those rates, is subject to traffic regulation orders, as was mentioned earlier. And the lead time on those is extraordinary, yes. It will be an amount of time before we can do that. I think what hasn't been mentioned, though, is what we've tried to do within the process is to address fairness where we can. So the prices actually within Stansted Abbots throughout all the week have been reduced. and that was a conscious decision following the consultation. Between the overview and scrutiny meeting and the proposal to the executive tonight, we've further reduced the Sunday charges from £2 to £1.50, trying to reflect again. And the £1.50 will be the cheapest parking across, with the exception of Buntingford and Sawbridgeworth, will be the cheapest for Sunday across East Herts. So where we can, we've tried to do apply what fairness we can. There is limited scope, and as I mentioned, and this isn't to be landed at Stansted Abbott's car park, but within the shape of the pricing, we are trying to recover a considerable amount of money within the budgetary assumptions that we've got for this coming financial year. Now, you know, it's a pimple on a pumpkin, the contribution from Stansted Abbott in terms of that 1.75 million, but it does form a piece where we're trying to achieve that stability. Our firm commitment is to seek that parity, but that will take time.
Thanks very much, Tim. I think, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We recognise that there is a disparity, and it's incredibly frustrating to be faced with a situation where TROs, which seem quite logically to be something that you could perhaps do over a week or a month, could take as long as 18 months or more. I think there are questions to be asked about why that process takes that long. But I think I agree with Tim. I think that, you know, it is part of a strategy. We definitely hear your voices. We appreciate that, but we have done some very clear marking of reductions of costs in Stansted Abbott's, and the Sunday charges remain the same rather than increasing. So, in my view, I feel that we've been as fair as we can. And of course, every time we reduce a cost, someone else has got to pick that cost up, and so that's a difficult one. Yeah, go on, Joe.
So just to come back on that, so we're absolutely clear on this. I know we've got the TROs and that process, but if the executive member was minded to, he could reduce that to zero for Sundays on Stansted Abbott if he wanted to. There's no regulations or paperwork or bureaucracy that would stop that. Is that correct?
I believe that's the case.
I think Jess is.
Oh, sorry, Jess, gone.
It's not, we'll still go through that process. So you could reduce, I think we spoke on the phone, to a penny, but when it's free, we would go back out to consultation as part of that process.
And the other point is, in terms of the 1.7 million, Stansted Abbott is already bringing in £7,000 a year more, it's projected, than in the budget. So it would to reduce that to reduce those Sunday charges wouldn't actually have a negative effect, or wouldn't mean that we don't achieve that target. In fact, it's already bringing in more than the budget, so it's already assisting. Is that correct as well, or have I misunderstood that?
Just for clarification, so the projected outturn for 24-25 is what you're describing. However, the 1.175 is a target for 25-26, so that contribution will carry across to support that 1.75. So it's a 25-26 target.
Any other questions? Tim, did you want to come back? No, that's on.
It's just a small. I'm picking up a point from the scrutiny committee comments, and I just wondered if the team could have a look at Crown Terrace car park, because I think, well, there's definitely a proposed hotel near the station, and I think there's an arrangement whereby that hotel will have use of some spaces in Crown Terrace and some spaces in Jackson Square, and so in the light of these comments here about air quality and so on, it seems odd to have traffic doing a rather awkward journey from the hotel to that car park when it's coming from somewhere with more car parking than anywhere else in town by the station. I wonder if that could be looked at some more, but whether that is actually sensible.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair challenge, Yvonne. I think, you know, any sort of activity around Hockrell Junction is not great news. And the Crown car park, it fulfills a number of very local needs for the residents in and around Hockrell Junction, because there's precious little space for them to park. So there are a demand on spaces there. You're absolutely right. There is a provision within the development of the hotel within Bishopstoke for a number of places to be earmarked for Crown Terrace and also Jackson Square. Quite how popular Crown Terrace will be for people who expect to, go straight from the car to the hotel, I don't know, but it's within the in the realms of the agreement. Yes, I mean there is a lot of work going offline with trying to challenge how Hockrell Junction can be improved, the air quality can be improved. And I think Crown Terrace probably has a role to play in that, but I'm not sure we're there yet in terms of what role it will play and how we can use it.
Yeah, Vicky.
I wanted to ask a question on the residents' parking zones, because I know there's a lot of interest in getting more residents' parking zones from a number of areas within East Herts. And I wondered what sort of changes are envisaged, what came out of the consultation, because some of the complaints I've had are around very long roads where the requirement, I think it's 40% coming from outside, is difficult because some parts of the road can be very busy and other parts aren't because they're further away. And also again for very short roads that don't have very much parking, again the percentages cause a few problems.
This is where Dom comes into his own with RPZs. I think there are, I mean, just by way of background, that the criteria was set for resident parking zones back in 22, and we haven't had a single successful application since then. So something is amiss. Now, quite whether that's because the criteria are absolutely spot on and the circumstances are meaning that we've got it right, or whether it's the other way around. Either which way, we want to assess them, but they are part of trying to manage urban traffic, urban parking, on-road parking. But it is a bit like whack-a-mole. You do tend to squirt it off somewhere else when a successful one is in place. But I'll give way to Dom on some of the more detailed comments that just the thoughts on what we've considered, Dom, within the scope.
In terms of the review of the policy, I believe that the 40% threshold, I think that's been recommended for removal, which will make it far easier for areas to be considered for resident permit parking. So I think that's going to simplify matters considerably in terms of surveying and reporting on the impact to residents in terms of non-residents using the space, the road space. So I think it'll make it far easier. And with the available funding, those projects will be able to progress, no doubt, bringing amenity to the residents.
I think that's something that a lot of residents will be very happy about. Thank you, Dom.
Chris.
So a question about funding, actually, because that's often the hurdle that we have for RPZs, or has been the hurdle in the past. Is it still the case that the funding will come from Section 106 or external funding only?
At the moment, yes, unless we go beyond the 1.175 and members wish to use funding in that way. But yes, at the moment, the challenge will be how you fund the work towards an RPZ. And just for clarity, the guidance is in Appendix G. It's not the final policy, it's some recommendations. So at a later date, members will see the revised policy come forward.
Okay, thank you very much. So the recommendations for this item are detailed on page 121 of the agenda pack. There are 3 recommendations, and we're going to take them individually. So the first recommendation is consider the comments put forward by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee listed in Appendix F and endorse the resulting actions proposed by the Executive Member for Environmental Sustainability as also detailed in Appendix F. And I wonder if we can have a show of hands to indicate in favour or against, please. All in favour? Thank you very much. Anyone against or abstaining? No, that's passed. Thank you. The second point, B, is endorse the draft parking strategy 2025 and recommend it to the council for approval. Again, can we have a vote of all those in favour? Thank you very much. And anyone against or abstaining? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. And the last one, C, is to support the proposed changes to car parking tariffs as described in Appendix D from April 2025 and recommend them to the Executive Member for Environmental Sustainability for approval and implementation. So can I have all of those in favour, please? So that's 5, thank you. And all those against? It's 3. Thank you very much. Any abstentions? No. Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much.
Ben, I wonder if I could just come in there. Just like to place on record my personal thanks to Jess and Dom for their support in the strategy, and particularly to Jess, as this must be one of your last contributions over a very successful career. I've personally benefited from your knowledge and experience and wise guidance, so I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Well, we've only got item 10, urgent business. Is there any urgent business? No. Okay. So at 20:37, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.